key voice we need today to learn from is Osama bin Laden? Okay, let me know if you had that on your 2023 bingo card. Welcome to Grace and Truth. My name is Owen Strand, and I will be your host. Please subscribe to, like, and download this podcast on all platforms. Today, yes, in late November 2023, we find ourselves in a very strange position. According to numerous videos on TikTok, of all places, a great number of younger men and women have found Osama bin Laden's letter to America from about 21 years ago, came out in 2002, and they are finding in it veritable wells of refreshment, enlightenment, and insight. Many of them are saying, as we're going to hear in just a minute from numerous TikTok videos, that this letter from bin Laden is doing nothing less than upending their entire worldview, causing them to question everything they've heard to this point, and initiating a serious change in their way of thought. This is a very strange development by anyone's reckoning, including the mainstream media. Numerous articles have appeared in the last week or so that have reckoned with this strange development, tangled with it, because even the left, I think, would not have seen many young men and women viewing Osama bin Laden as a role model and a voice of truth in this time. But that gives you a little sense for just how upside down our world is and America is in late 2023. But don't take my word for it. Let's now hear from a sampling of videos that praise and extol the wisdom of Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden's letter to America explaining why he attacked Americans. This has left me very disillusioned, and I feel the same exact way I felt when I was deconstructing Christianity.
I will never look at life the same. I will never look at this country the same. Please read it, and if you have read it, let me know if you are also going through an existential crisis in this very moment, because in the last 20 minutes, my entire viewpoint on the entire life I have believed and I have lived has changed.
In reading the letter, I could only think of this tweet that I saw the other day. Under settler colonialism, any kind of resistance is branded as terrorist because the only acceptable violence is violence by the occupier.
Okay, so we had a few little jumps there in the recording and the playback, that is. But basically what these three different TikTok videos are saying collectively is that, again, Osama bin Laden's letter to America has been a fountain of insight and revelation for the younger generation that has helped them understand the Israeli-Palestine conflict in a new sense. In what follows then, in what remains for us, I want to talk about this under four overview truths. And I want to try to equip, in particular, fathers and mothers, church figures, anyone out there who is engaging young men and women, the rising generation who is very much influenced by social media. And my hope is that I can help engage the younger generation. This video has come out, by the way, just in time for Thanksgiving. So as if we weren't all facing enough challenges in terms of coming back together with family members we might disagree with. That's not true in my case, but I know a lot of people do battle that challenge where you've got not a whole lot to talk about around the Thanksgiving dinner table because of all the political divisions out there in our world. Well, here is yet another one. Here is a great conversation starter if you're in America for the Thanksgiving feast this Thursday. Do you think Osama bin Laden is a role model? Again, didn't have that one on the 2023 bingo card. In response to this strange development, I want to say just four ideas in what remains for us. First, I want us to see that bin Laden's letter to America fits the woke narrative perfectly. It fits the woke narrative perfectly. And I went to bin Laden's 2002 letter to America and read it again. I believe I read it some years ago. Didn't think I would be reading it again for any real reason. But I'm reminded of how bin Laden's framing really does fit a woke framing of America's presence in Israel, of Israel's very existence itself, of Palestine's supposed unjust position. All this young people today have been very much trained to believe by woke education. Woke ideas emphasize that any form of colonialization, especially by majority groups like white people, is going to be oppressive and unjust. Any efforts to fuel colonialism, to establish an Israeli state, for example, in the Middle East, as that is connected to America, which over years past and generations past is an imperialistic power, all of that is going to be seen as negative, once more, in a woke framework. Wokeness, we remember, reads basically all of life in terms of two major categories: the oppressor, that which is in the majority position in any number of categories, and the oppressed, those who are not in the driver's seat. And so America, for many years, with the UK and with other democracies or republics, did indeed have a large footprint in the world. Part of that legacy is Israel. And because of that, the nation state of Israel, that is, in the mid 20th century, because of all of that, now woke students have a framework from Osama bin Laden himself by which they can read back Western history. And now they have justification. They're arguing, that is, on TikTok of all places, for seeing Israel as the aggressor, Palestine as the state that has been done injustice. And so the pushback against Israel is now read as just. Now, this is not to plunge us in this humble little podcast into Israeli-Palestine matters, but I will simply say this for us right now, just as a moment of clarity, if you don't hear it here or on TikTok or anywhere else, what Hamas has done as an organization to Israel in recent weeks is absolutely horrific. So I know that there are a good number of Christian voices who are still saying very little or absolutely nothing about what Hamas has done to Israel. I'm not trying to dive into every element of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I am simply trying to say, and am very much saying with success, that Hamas is an evil organization, that what it did to Israel is horrific, and that we should absolutely stand against it. And there is no sourcing of any letter from Osama bin Laden or anyone else that is going to justify what Hamas has done. And so if you are not hearing clarity from your pastor or your institutional head or someone like that, as a Christian, I pray that my humble little voice can be a part of clarifying things for you, at least in this context, because what Hamas has done is not at all right, and there is no justification for it. And you certainly should not be going to Osama bin Laden, who is responsible for the death of thousands of people in America 22 years ago, to be tutored on the niceties of the Israel-Palestine conflict. There is nothing to learn from Osama bin Laden but how to hate and how to destroy. That is the only thing you can learn from Osama bin Laden and his letter to America. There is nothing positive to learn from this. And I am grieved at how few Christian leaders will speak up and say things like this in this day. I am no great shakes. I am no prophet. But at the very least, I have this platform, and I will say it, and I will say it uncompromisingly. And young people in particular, those of you who are on social media, those of you who are on Instagram and TikTok and other platforms, please don't just hear a narrative and automatically buy it. You should already be trained in critical thinking. I pray as a young Christian man or woman, you should know that you have to hear both sides. You should know that you have to think things out. You should know that just because somebody looks into a camera and has a tear slowly creeping down their cheek, whatever they say does not necessarily prove true. You've got to think through things, and you certainly as well have to think through the sources of what is said. And if the source of what you are hearing is the world's most successful terrorist and has killed thousands of people, innocent people in American soil 22 years ago, you have a major truth problem. And your generation, sadly, is being taken captive by wicked ideology. The stakes are very high. This is not believing the wrong narrative about your local sports team. This is believing the wrong narrative about global terrorism and hundreds of people in Israel just about 6 weeks ago at the time of this recording being slaughtered, including many children, having done nothing, having provoked nothing. Bin Laden, we're reminded, his letter fits the woke narrative perfectly, as does his anti-Semitic comments in the letter to America. For example, we read this in Bin Laden's 2002 letter to America, which is his justification, of course, of the September 11 terrorist attacks. Bin Laden wrote this: Your former president warned you previously about the devastating Jewish control of capital and about a day that would come when it would enslave you. It has happened. Continuing on. As for us, our Iraq was invaded in response to pressure from capitalists with greed for black gold, oil, and you continue to support the oppressive Israelis in their occupation of our Palestine in response to pressures on your administration by a Jewish lobby backed by enormous financial capabilities. All right, again, that's quoting bin Laden. There's a good deal to say about Israel and Palestine in terms of its conflict. That's not what I'm attempting to do here, go through all elements of the last 70 years of that history. What I would very simply say to you, though, is that you need to know from the outset that Osama bin Laden is as anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish as it gets. Osama bin Laden hated the Jewish people with a white-hot hatred. And so he is not to be trusted in terms of discussing Israel and Palestine as a conflict. And this is a further problem with the woke system of today, moving off of bin Laden for a moment. The woke system that has taken over American higher education and much of American entertainment and other sectors of our society, including the church, regrettably and tragically, is an anti-Semitic movement. The Jewish people are hated in a woke framework. And we've seen this all across America. We've seen this on many college campuses in the West, where lots of young people have marched in support of Hamas and against Israel. And that is just absolutely reprehensible. That is showing you the effect that wokeness is having on our campuses. Here is the deal. America has been force-fed the lie, the utter lie, that your average white person is a white supremacist. And white supremacy is everywhere. And white people are fomenting white supremacy in every encounter with a person of color. Listen, partiality is real. It's a real problem. We think of James 2 in the Bible as groundings for sinfully favoring one people group over another or one person over others. And people have certainly done that in America in terms of skin color. And where they have done that or where they continue to do that, that is evil and wrong and anti-gospel. But it is also very much the case that today we are trained to think that simply because you have a certain skin color, a skin tone, white skin, you are an oppressor of every person of color you encounter. You effectively hate them and you are a white supremacist. That is supposedly the major problem today in America. That is what woke voices tell us. That's what I've written about in that book way up there on that shelf, Christianity and Wokeness, if you want a serious resource in tracking this system and understanding it and then responding to it with the gospel. At the same time that your average white person, so-called, is called a white supremacist, young men and women on college campuses and elsewhere are being educated to think that the Jewish people are a festering cancer on the earth and that they deserve to be attacked, and that it is a good thing when innocent children in Israel, for example, are slaughtered where they stand, as happened about 6 weeks ago. So here's what's happening. There's being a lie fed the American people, and there's a fake evil that has supposedly overtaken this country, at the same time that there is a real evil that is being advanced in academic circles, and that's being called virtuous. To speak much more simply, this is what happens when a people turns their back on God, as has happened in some significant form in the West, and what is good becomes evil, and what is evil becomes good. What is true becomes a lie, and what is a lie becomes true. I would simply say to you, watching this or listening this, don't be taken captive by evil ideologies. That is a huge part of your walk as a Christian. I'm not saying this as an angry, red-faced fundamentalist. I'm saying this as a calm, Bible-loving Christian. Colossians 2:8, you must not let yourself or any within your power, as much as you have, by the grace of God, be taken captive by evil ideologies. And friends, there have always been evil ideologies warring for people, but the speed of communication and the number of platforms we engage on a daily basis in late 2023 means that we are directly faced with evil ideologies at a greater pace than any period preceding this in human history. What that means, said more practically, is that you're face to face with a lot of ideological foes on a daily basis. And you've got to be as much as ever, equipped in the word. You've got to be going deep in the word to have a biblical mindset and a biblical worldview. And you've got to be weighing every ideology in light of scripture. You can't simply hear narratives, watch people crying, hear a persuasive presentation and fall prey to it, especially when there is emotion behind it, especially when somebody shares their story. Their story may be real, it may be absolutely authentic, or it may not be, but a story does not the truth make. You can have an individual story, but that does not necessarily sync with the broader narrative. This is a massive failing of American evangelicals in the last 5 to 10 years. We've had people share their story, including true experiences, but those experiences have been hitched to evil ideologies that have then gotten into the church and corrupted the church's faith and practice and helped to lead people away from the sound doctrine of God's word, the very gospel itself. We're seeing another iteration of this evil play out happening right now on TikTok and social media through the tutelage of a dead man named Osama bin Laden. You can, even as you can scarcely keep up with the ideological threats today, you can scarcely make these things up. The truth is stranger than fiction today. This leads to our second overview insight for our discussion. What we're witnessing on TikTok through these videos, and there are many more we could have played on the podcast, is what happens when children are educated to hate America. So this is what it's like, in other words, to grow up in a context when younger people really do respond to the training that they have received in a lot of cases. And so they hate and blame America and the allies of America and those who are for democracy and those who are for the free market. All of those forces and many others we could mention, that's the side of darkness. Friends, that's exactly what the young men and women who attend our colleges and universities have been trained in. That's what they have been taught. That's what entertainment voices have told them. That's what celebrities tell them. That's certainly what leftist politicians tell them. So I guess we can't really be that shocked, can we? Even at this shocking development with bin Laden's letter to America and its effect among young people today. Of course, on the platform TikTok, which is very closely associated with China waging an open ideological war with America and the West every second of every day right now. And we have to know that, and we have to stand against that. That's part of why I am not on TikTok. I'm not saying it's a sin to be on TikTok. I don't know if you should or your family should, but I can tell you I don't want any part of TikTok because of the origin of TikTok and because of what it may be doing, what it may well be doing. I listen to the voice of senators like Josh Hawley. I hear his counsel, and it does not hearten me at all. We've got to take these things very seriously, but we've got to know beyond TikTok, beyond this platform, that our youth have been trained to hate this country. And so guess what? They do hate this country, and they hate our allies, and they hate Israel, and they hate the free market. They hate the free market, by the way. They hate the capitalist Jews, right? You heard of bin Laden talk about that, the devastating Jewish control of capital. They hate the free market because the free market is associated with liberty. And so the hatred of the Jews among those who have been educated in woke tropes is synonymous with the hatred of the free market. Our young people, I repeat myself, have been trained to hate what is called capitalism. That is Karl Marx's term. I don't use it. I use a better term than anything that poisonous thinker used, the free market. If you hate the free market, you're going to hate the Jews, because the Jews have been proficient in Western society since they have been allowed to be for the last several hundred years in making money, in driving global markets forward. I'm not trying to say that everything done by Jewish people has been good. I don't think it has been, just like I don't think everything done by any ethnicity has been good. But I think it is bonkers to conclude with Osama bin Laden, to repeat, that the free market is evil because the Jews have succeeded in many respects across the world in playing the free market well. Fundamentally, young people are being trained to absolutely despise liberty. They're being trained to hate making money. They're being trained to hate capitalism, again, better termed the free market, at the same time that they are tweeting out their hatred of the free market on $500 phones, $3,000 laptops, and wearing designer jeans. And so the ironies here are so thick. And it's fun to point out those ironies, and you can kind of chuckle. But if your irony is that thick, that shows you a massive problem with your worldview. If you are decrying Jewish capitalism at the same time that your entire existence is awash in capitalistic products and even capitalistic excess, that tells you something about the integrity of your worldview. Because if you're giving in to the very sin that you're decrying, something is very much wrong. In this case, let me untangle the knot just momentarily. The free market is not bad. Capitalism, air quotes, is not bad. Global prosperity is not bad. What the West has wrought from something of a Christian worldview foundation, at least significantly, in the last 500 years is absolutely incredible. Global life expectancy has doubled in the last 200 years. Why has it doubled? Because of greater material prosperity, because of the free market, because of markets opening all over the world, because of the ability not just to have your daily farm take-ins for the day, what you've harvested for the day, but the ability to invest money, the ability to store money in banks, the ability for banks to pool that money and then invest it collectively and make the shareholders money, and so on and so forth. The global financial market has been really the foremost driver, with medicine advances, of course, and others we could mention, of human flourishing in a general sense. Life expectancy has doubled since the Industrial Revolution. So the narrative that our young people are still fed today is a poisonous, bankrupt narrative. There are going to be all sorts of sins wherever humanity is plying its trade, wherever people are trading with one another, wherever money is being made, wherever possessions are being bought. Rest assured, there's going to be sin. There's going to be sin. There's going to be sin in every system until Jesus makes the world right. But fundamentally, what you need to know, just in the way that God has set the world up, is that market exchange is good. It is a common grace good. It has led to incredible flourishing in natural terms in our world. If you have, by the way, greater capital, if you have bigger markets, you're going to have greater investments in medicine and in science, and those greater investments in medicine and in science are going to yield real health benefits and the accrual of hospitals, for example, where there used to be none, where you used to call a witch doctor or something like this, or you used to merely have a priest come and say last rites over you when you got a cold or the flu. Now you have medical facilities. There's all sorts of ways that the explosion of the West, in particular in the last 500 years, since the Reformation and on, has benefited the world. The narrative, what I'm trying to say is, overall, the narrative young people are getting at colleges and universities is the opposite of truth. The world has not gone wrong in the last several hundred years in terms of natural human flourishing. Natural human flourishing has ramped way, way, way up. The free market is the foremost driver of natural prosperity in the world known to man. And many people now are living longer and living more prosperously than anyone has across the board in human history considered at national level. This is not the narrative you're getting, though, if you are a 20-year-old at a liberal school. You're further being told that climate change, a subject for another day, is causing the world to enter an unparalleled season of global death cycles and these sorts of things, and that is also a lie. All of this, then, shows us, I'm giving myself a headache here, the high cost of bad education, of lies being sold to our kids over and over again, and what that is reaping in terms of society. Now we have a generation that has been raised in conditions of elite material prosperity to hate this country and to hate the West, where they have the very liberties and freedoms to hate their country that they would not have and do not have in countries where people are suffering tremendously, for example, under Islam. The strangest thing is happening. Western youth are longing to live in countries that are totalitarian, where there's horrific repression. They're being trained to think that the West is the conditions of horrific repression. Nothing could be further from the truth. this is where, seen from a ministry standpoint, you just see that, of course, our mission as American Christians, for example, is not to train our kids to love America as if that's the mission of the church. That's not the mission of the church. But hey, pastors and teachers and fathers and mothers and professors and Christian school teachers and homeschooling parents and co-op group leaders, could I just say a word to you? You have a role to play here. The only thing you and I need to preach and teach is not just the gospel. We need to teach that. That's the fountainhead. We never advance beyond that. We never mature out of the gospel. Don't misunderstand me. But you need to do, could you hear this? You need to do at least a little bit of civilizational work in this day and age. The youth are not all right. The youth are being trained to hate this country and to hate civilization. And they're being trained that repressive Islam is a better civilizational producer than some form of a Christian hybrid that has created the modern American context. And that is simply not the case. It is not true. Would you rather live under Sharia law, or would you rather live in a society that has been seriously influenced by Christianity? You know that I'm not a Christian nationalist. If you listen to this podcast for longer than about 30 seconds, I'm not even close to that. And Christian nationalism is not the only alternative to totalitarianism. It can veer into being another form of it. But I am very much good with a society that has been profoundly influenced by Christianity without making the nation Christian for a lot of different reasons. Absolutely, I want a strong nation that sees itself under God and that grants people all sorts of liberties, with religious liberty at the start, in order to create a free and thriving national context, free culture, free society, free church, and on it goes. So I would say, in sum, no, you and I are not training our kids to be little God and country nationalists. We're not. That's not what we're in this for. But could you hear a caution? If you don't train your kids to see the goods in a society influenced by Christianity, know that their peers are over here telling them that it's better to live under Sharia law than religious liberty and all the other liberties. And so our young people are in a worldview death match here, where there are very persuasive voices in their ears telling them to hate this country and hate this country's freedoms and give all of this civilizational inheritance away. That is not the way forward. Educate your kids in the gospel and the word and a biblical worldview, but also help them understand how to engage America well, not as if it's either perfect or the worst country ever. Try this. Give them a balanced take on this country that is very thankful for all the common grace goods in it, the immense store of common grace goods that we have known in America, with the world's most thriving religious liberty free market we've ever known. Give them a sense of that. Help them understand the real failings of America as well. We can talk about those at length, but give them an ability to be very thankful for America, to not think it's perfect or the New Jerusalem, and certainly not to hate America. That is not good. We're reminded in this, thirdly, I'll move rapidly through these final two overviews, these final two insights. We're reminded of the need to stand against lies. I've been talking about this at some length, but brothers and sisters, the lies are everywhere today. We've got to work overtime shifts to help, again, the rising generation not be overtaken by lies, not be taken captive by ungodly ideologies, including anti-Semitism. Yes, some on the left talk a lot about anti-Semitism and how bad it is. That does not make standing against anti-Semitism a bad cause. We absolutely need to be against anti-Semitism. It is a surging force in this world. It is a very terrible and consequential force in this world. So help your kids see that it is an evil thing to be taken captive by lies, and it is an evil thing to hate Jews. That's wrong. You don't have to have a certain eschatology to understand this. You may have a certain eschatology that inclines you this way, but your eschatology may not directly connect to the present nation state of Israel and its future in terms of the global plan of God. Whether it does or not, it is wrong to hate anyone because of their ethnicity and their skin color and their background. It is wrong to hate the Jews because some of the Jews have made a lot of money. That is not a sound idea in any sense. And that leads to our fourth and final insight. We cannot fail to stand for what is good. We've got to have a voice in these major worldview contests that are going on all around us. We can't simply let our kids, for example, get lost in their phones and watch reel after reel and video after video, and we have no idea what is going on, and we're not fighting for anything. And I don't mean we fight for what is good fundamentally out of a posture of anger. That's not what I'm calling for. I'm not calling for you to hate the left. I'm not calling for you to train your children to hate the left. That's not what I'm seeking on a day-to-day basis. But what I am seeking to do as a born-again believer, as one who is loved by God, and as such has trusted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, repented of my sin, and now seek on a daily basis by the Spirit's power to follow Jesus in real, imperfect, but authentic faith, is I am trying, as best I can, in a Matthew 5 sense, to be salt and light in this world. And part of that commission, part of that mandate for the individual believer and for the local church itself is to stand for the truth and stand against lies. And that is vital. It's vital to do this, though, in a fruit of the Spirit-driven way where you are not living in anger, you're not living in fear, you're not living in paranoia, but you are fundamentally anchored in the gospel. You're anchored in the sovereignty of God. You're trusting the providential plan of God. You know that God is good. You know that God is not going to be overcome by the devil. These are things you must know today. You must remember. You must help your kids understand. But then from that solid foundation, you do have to begin helping them make sense of the world and make sense of global conflicts and not be overtaken by these scary realities, whether that is what is happening in Israel or whether that is what Osama bin Laden transacted in the form of thousands of deaths some 22 years ago. You have to help your children understand that God is sovereign over all things, but that you and I and they are called to stand against lies and stand for what is good. And ultimately, our goal in all of this is to proclaim Christ. You see, that's ultimately what Christians offer the public square and their nation. We should be very good citizens in all sorts of ways. We should engage the democratic process. We should vote. We should stand for what is good in our communities at the local level. There's lots to say about that. But ultimately, we're not trying to be in the public square shorn of the gospel. We're not trying to do this natural law project where all we do is talk about the reason and good sense and good logic behind, say, manhood or womanhood or good nations or geopolitics or foreign policy. We think according to reason. We think things out according to logic. These are instruments and tools and gifts that God has given us, absolutely. But what we are ultimately here to proclaim is the grace and truth that is in Jesus Christ and Christ alone. So, even as we have this public witness standing against lies, as I've tried to articulate in a small fashion on this very episode, and standing for what is good, remembering that God is going to make all things right, that all nations are going to be put under the feet of King Jesus, and all the sad things are going to come untrue, and all the conflicts are going to stop, and all the tears are going to be dried, and we will live forever with God in a world of love. As you remember that, as you go back to that regularly, in order that you don't lose your sanity and you don't lose your Christian confession, so you and I have to remember that we need to actually be preaching the gospel every chance we get, not against people, but for people, trusting in God and God alone to save them and call them out of darkness and call them into the marvelous light of King Jesus. Are we not seeing the great need for Jesus today? Young people are thinking that Osama bin Laden, the world's most successful terrorist, a despicably evil man, is a sound guide to foreign policy. You can't make this up. These are truly strange days. Brothers and sisters, don't lose your head. Don't lose your faith. Don't go crazy. Don't get into conspiracy theories. Instead, anchor yourself in the Word of God, in the grace of God. Stand for what is true. Stand against what is evil. Pray without ceasing. Remember that you're not in the driver's seat ultimately either. God is the one who has to make the world right. God is the one who has to act. God is the one who will defend, bless, and protect his people. God is the one who is going to bring us all safely home. Until that day, pray to be faithful, stand for what is good, speak and promote the grace and truth that is found in Christ and Christ alone. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please subscribe to, like, and download this podcast on all platforms. And remember the hope that is found in the grace and truth of Christ and Christ alone. God bless you.